Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or good day wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the next episode of No Dice, No Glory. Sponsored by our jobs that actually pay us money, we're coming to you not at all live from an abandoned arms factory deep under a mountain in West Virginia. We are proud to proffer to you the finest in wargaming coverage. Without any further ado, let's get this show on the road.
Thank you, Sean, for that introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, the regular Tales of the Sail crew is back for December, and we are joined by a lot of guests this evening as we record. So joining us tonight are the regulars. So we have Glenn, Gentleman Farmer Van Meter.
Hey.
We have Tyler, For Real Pirate Stone.
Hello, everybody.
We also have Joe Forrester from the Blood and Pigment contingent.
Hello.
We have Liam Taylor joining us all the way from England.
Good evening.
And we have the commander himself, Mike Tunez, joining us from down in Miami, Florida.
How's it going, guys?
So for those of you keeping track, we have 3 time zones. We have Pacific Northwest, we have Central Time or Eastern Time, and then we have Greenwich Mean Time. We're also counting, we're going to say 4. We're going to say 4 time zones because Miami isn't really, it's its own thing, right, Mike?
Yeah.
Like
That's
Island
accurate.
time down there.
Yeah.
If you count farm time, you might be able to count 5.
Yeah, that's true. Farm time's different, right? That's why we
It
have daylight
really
saving
is.
time.
I mean, they blame it on us, but I think it was just the politicians.
That's fair.
Because
So
most farmers also hate it.
So there's going to be a lot of edits to this, I suspect, because it's 6 people, and so managing as many folks on here is going to be interesting. But we'll do our best to kind of keep it moving, mostly for the sake of poor Liam, who's brave enough to join us from a 5-hour time difference. So it's currently 11:30 p.m. as we record this. On the East Coast, it's 6:30. And our main purpose here today is to discuss the new expansion, which is Fire on the Frontier. And we have a lot of experts here to help us kind of preview this. But we'll give a quick overview of what we've kind of been up to, and we'll ask also our guests to kind of check in and tell us what they've been busy doing. So I'll start us off and tell you that I cooked Thanksgiving dinner for 10 people. I actually got a game in over the weekend, and I'm looking for the opportunity to try to get a demo in with my friend Miguel, who is going to help demo stuff for the guys down at Mythicos again. See if we can get them going down there, because they got a great crew. And you got to talk to them at Historicon, right, Mike?
Yeah, it's very brave of you to admit, like on air in a podcast, that you're friends with Miguel. It's not just some guy you've met somewhere.
Miguel's
But
pretty great.
that's both of you.
Miguel's pretty great. I like him. I'm bummed that he's going to be retiring relatively soon, because he's going to be down there in Florida with you. So you get him next.
Not with me. He's going with Rufus. Thankfully,
that makes sense.
Yeah,
they can cause trouble together. Tyler, what have you been up to since last we spoke, which wasn't that long ago?
I ate 3 Thanksgiving dinners between all the different households.
Well done.
Yeah, I didn't have to cook anything, which was awesome, and I'm still trying to get through the leftovers. But other than that, I have been painting Oak and Iron. For anyone who's in the Oak and Iron gaming group, my trials and tribulations with contrast are probably pretty well known by now, but I think I have it figured out. And I've been working on my Blood and Valor stuff, because playing in the Giant Iron Man tournament, or watching people play in the Giant Iron Man tournament, was kind of inspiring for me to get that finished up. And regrettably, I think I am going to end up using contrast paints for the sun weathered and faded out look on my New Zealand and Ottoman troops.
One of us.
Word on the street is, you might, if you don't have contrast paints already, you might want to wait around for the RV Painter version.
That's what I was doing, yeah. And then the tournament happened, and I bought a bunch of contrast paints. I figured I needed to paint Oak and Iron ships in a hurry. probably wouldn't have been so stressful if I wasn't in a crunch.
No, Glenn, I was very, very excited when you sent me pictures of you reorganizing your hobby room. Is this true?
Yeah. So our tenants moved out of the other half of the house, and we've taken it over. And much of that turned into board game storage. So that all got out of my basement, and now I have a lot more space to store things.
Fill
So
up
I'm
with
hoping
models?
to.
Nice.
What, Tyler?
I said fill up with models.
Yes. Well, the problem is I have the models. Now I just need to organize them into the new space. But yes, I'm reorganizing the gaming room and cleaning it, which is my major project. So between prepping for Historicon, cleaning up after Historicon, and then reorganizing the hobby room, I haven't done a lot of hobbying, but there's progress on the hobby front.
So we did not have the benefit of seeing Liam at Historicon, unless I'm delusional. It's very cold in this room right now because there's no heat on in the house in this section of the house. So if I start to sound delusional, that's kind of what's going on. But Liam, what have you been up to hobby-wise other than helping design this whole thing, which we'll talk about momentarily?
What have I done? I sawed the front off a brigantine. Does that count?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. I
He
sawed
just
the front
really-
off a
Why?
brigantine.
He really
Huh?
hates. He really hates all of our ships, so he just buys them and cuts them in pieces and throws
Yeah,
them away.
that's-
That's what he does.
That's the game. No, I think this is the fourth brigantine I've done, and this one I'm converting into a grab, which is an Indian type of ship. So I need to saw the front off because it has like a galley front with a flat prow. If you can imagine what a galley looks like at the front.
Yes.
So I cut that off, and I'm kind of fiddling around with bits of wood to try and make a galley prow for it.
Ooh.
So there's that, and that's kind of the major project at the moment. I did manage to get a game in on Friday. I went down to see Ben and Cad from Foreground at their place, Factorum, which is really cool. They've got some excellent gaming tables there. And I played a ship game with Cad, trying out some of the new rules for that are coming out in Raise the Black, doing a bit of testing. And that's kind of it.
Wow, it's not really testing anymore at this point. It's but
Well,
yeah,
Just
I'm sure we'll find a way to break your rules by the time they officially
Errata.
trying to break them.
Errata
I guess it's,
V101.
yeah, exactly. I guess you can test even when it's already done. So.
It's kind of jumping the gun from the Fire on the Frontiers, but are you guys going to be going over there to do videos? Mike, speaking more to Mike, are you guys going to be going over there to do videos for the new Kickstarter with the?
At some
Are
point,
they
I'm
on
sure.
tabletop now? Is that
Yeah.
channel?
As far as yeah, that's the plan. Who knows? I mean, it's hard to plan things these days with travel restrictions or whatnot. I know it's open right now, but that may not be the case later. Who knows? So, I'd like to. That's the plan. We'll see. The plan is tentatively yes, unless something stops us. We'll.
Those are always really good videos. Those videos for the last Kickstarter are what got me into the hobby. That's how I found the game.
A lot of people, yeah.
Yeah. On the other side of the world, in the wilds, I think you're relatively close to the world's only temperate rainforest, is Joe Forrester. Joe,
That's right.
what have you been up to?
He lives in the rainforest, actually.
He lives in the rainforest.
Mhm.
Actually, I do. Pacific Rainforest. I have 27 acres of Pacific Rainforest. I have been reading books and writing squibs and biographies and staying up too late and playtesting. And my newest hobby thing is I just got a bunch of civilians from readout to paint up and get ready to be knocked in the head and scalped. So.
Nice. Yeah, I'm excited to see these pictures because I will point out, and I'm sure that like Joe will make mention of it earlier, but there is a really great preview of Fire on the Frontier on the Blood and Pigment site that gives you a pretty solid overview of all the stuff that we're probably going to spend most of our time talking about today. But you and Liam are some of the principal architects.
That's right.
We'll circle back to that in a minute. Mike, you just had your big Black Friday sale.
That's right.
How'd you guys do?
Technically.
And what else you been up to?
So basically, been a lot of work. Not even for hobbying, unfortunately. Although I did paint one model of the young Braves as just kind of a test. So that was technically work, but it is still hobbying, so it counts, right?
It does count. It absolutely counts.
But yeah, that's really all I've had for hobbying. I haven't even been able to play any games of anything aside from I got a game of Hero Quest. I got the new Hero Quest that just came, like the Kickstarter thing this year.
I think we've talked about this off air before, but
we have, yeah. I do this every year. Yeah. So I do this every year, and then I took it and I ran all the kids through it, my sons and their cousins, and it was really fun. But that's been all my gaming, pretty much. Sorry, excuse me. I've been talking all day because coming back Monday from Thanksgiving break and lots of talking and catching up with things. So, but yes, that's been pretty much it for me. Other than Slater, Liam, and Joseph.
So before we jump into the Fire on the Frontier formally, I'll just mention, since we would have normally mentioned this to any listeners in the Lost podcast. So Glenn and Tyler and I, at great personal cost, recorded a podcast in early November as a preview before we headed off to Historicon. We announced the winner of the huge prize we gave out. We recorded a pretty good episode, and then I couldn't get it edited in time, and our calendar of releases for podcasts for No Dice, No Glory was too full. So we wound up basically scrapping it and substituting it for the podcast where we debriefed with Mitch and we interviewed everybody at Historicon. But, and we'll mention this very briefly, and that is that we've been doing this for 2 years now. Am I reading that right, Glenn?
Yeah. Sounds about right.
2
Since
years.
didn't count. But yeah.
Last year didn't count. Well, I think we
won.
If Mike's not busy, we might have him on to judge us for our New Year's resolutions. That's going to be the next one. And I got a lot of work to do. I still have to climb Everest. I'm confident that'll get done. But other than that, I have big plans for my Christmas break because I didn't get things done the way I thought they'd get done. But yeah, 2 years is this has been a lot of fun. And this is a really cool podcast to have be our kind of informal anniversary because we got a lot of cool people on. So without further ado here, we'll talk about the Fire on the Frontier. So I'm going to start by asking this of Joe, because Joe seems like he's been, nose deep in books for an enormous amount of time. Why don't you fill us in on just what is this expansion?
It's a smaller expansion. It's focused in the last quarter of the 17th century, and geographically it's focused on New England, kind of New York up through Canada, and specifically looking at King Philip's War, which is 75 through 8, and King Philip's War, and then King William's War, which is a little later, 1689 through 97. Is that right? So it's focusing mostly on those two wars, a lot of Native Americans, French, and English. So that's the focus. But it's kind of a addendum or an expansion to No Peace Beyond the Line. So that book technically covered this era, but this goes a lot deeper in detail and is able to focus a little more.
I think it's important to introduce the book too, that this book is pretty much exclusively the work of Liam and Joseph, who've kind of, through the whole Raise the Black project, slowly become kind of like part of the development house of everything we're doing. So while I was busy pulling my hair out trying to get continuing to attempt to get this Kickstarter made in this fastest time as possible, they were able to provide all this excellent content that we could use to continue releasing new stuff for the game without letting it stagnate while we're between Kickstarters, which is something that's really awesome and I think we've been lacking. So kudos, gentlemen, and thank you for all the excellent work you've done for us in the community.
Thanks for letting us do the fun stuff.
Yeah. So let's talk about so I'll go to Liam for this one, but the other two guys can jump in. If I'm a new player or if I'm somebody who hasn't kind of looked at all the previews for this, what kind of factions can I run for it? As an expansion, how does it quite fit in terms of gameplay, list building, stuff like that? If you want to, if I'm a French player, British player, who can play in this expansion?
Okay. Well, I guess the background to it was when No Peace Beyond the Line was released, the factions that were in No Peace Beyond the Line, for particularly the North American Indians, so Iroquois and those kind of guys, they were kind of quite samey to the Caribbean guys. There weren't separate models for them, and so it just felt a little bit like those factions could do with some updating, particularly when new models came out, making them more kind of appropriate to the Indians and Native Americans of the Northeast and Canada. So that's kind of how it started out. We did it originally as an upgrade, if you like, and a rewrite of those North American native lists that exist in No Peace Beyond the Line. But then kind of Mike came along and said, well, that's great, but since you guys have kind of wrapped up what you're helping us with Raise the Black, can you just quickly knock this into a complete book with a background? So we said foolishly, yeah, sure, why not? And it sort of grew from there. So the factions that are in the new book really cover in more detail those North American tribes. So you've got Northeast Woodland Indians, you've got Wabanaki, you've got New England Indians, who are the main protagonists in the King Philip's War. You've got we also did update some of the southern tribes, largely because we now have new models for them. But the real guys who are involved in the north are the Iroquois, the Northeast Woodland Indians, the Wabanaki, and the New England guys. And then to add to that, we thought, since we're covering King Philip's War and King William's War, we ought to do more detailed and specific lists for the English and the French involved in that kind of 1675 to 1700 time frame. So it's very focused in on that
Now,
bracket.
you mentioned Southern tribes just now, and I have to ask, are you talking about the South American tribes, or are you just talking about like Southern U.S. tribes, like in the Florida?
Southern U.S.
Okay.
Pretty much north of Florida. Because
Got it.
Florida's
Bottom line
still
for-
kind of a little Caribbean. They're more like the South American and Caribbean Indians than they are like the North Americans. Around the northern part of Florida, but the rest of
So my favorite tribe, for example, the Westo.
They're evil. That's
I was going to
That's why
ask.
I like them.
Yeah, so that
How
actually
many-
brings me to go ahead, Glenn.
I was going to say, how many smaller tribes do you guys have in there? Because I know a lot of people will go and find like some tribe I've never heard of, like the Oesto, and and they'll go like, "Why aren't there rules for these guys?" So I was just wondering how specific you got, or is it
Well,
like kind of broad
I think-
strokes?
It gets pretty specific. I think we should turn this one over to Joseph, to be fair, because he is kind of Injun Joe. He did incredible amounts of detailed research, reading on tribes, and I mean, we had to pull him back from kind of
Yeah, we
doing
did.
a fourth option for for any tribe above 200 braves. It's kind of like was his cutoff, and we said no, you got to go a little higher than that. But Joe, who we got in there?
I wish we could get deeper, but yeah, like you said, there's just so many different tribes, and there's the way the Indians are classified or named is pretty complex and hard to dig through. So there's always going to be something that's not represented. But we got the New England. We did a lot of sub factions or force options to represent these tribes. So the New England tribes has like a Narragansett, a Wampanoag, and a couple other force options to represent. excuse me, the various tribes under the New England tribes umbrella, because they were all pretty similar as far as fighting style and lifestyle. So we couldn't really make 27 new Indian factions. But there's a lot of interesting characters we want to represent.
Although he tried.
He did try.
I think I killed more factions than I did actually think about. So I think he named all the native factions in there, or almost all of them. But then there's quite a few sub factions, and you'll see some of that in Raise the Black too, for the Iroquois and whatnot.
Yeah,
I'm not going to give everything away, but that's the basics.
Yeah, there's a lot of 18th century equivalents in Raise the Black, so we kind of just worked backwards from there and just updated them for the 17th, so they'll work across the board really well.
So if Joe did most of the native tribes, Liam, did you deal with the European factions, or did you like what was the division of labor like in terms of the two of you? I'll start with Liam and ask him like what he worked on extensively.
Well, Joe, to be fair, did most of the clever design stuff when it came to the factions, and then I kind of, I suppose, helped a little bit with some ideas, and I got to write a
crazy.
Yeah, told Joe that when we got to 27 sub factions of Wabanaki, that was more than enough. I did a lot of the background writing, a lot of the historical research across the piece. So it was really more of an interactive. It was more of an interactive collaboration across the whole piece, I would say, than Joe taking one bit and me taking the other. Wouldn't you say, Joe?
Yep, there's a lot of interaction on all those factions. I kind of threw ideas out there, and you refined them, and then you did all the history summary work. That was great.
Liam did all the tea making and drinking, though.
Yeah, he did.
Well, somebody has to.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm going to ask a question of the three of you guys, and I'll start with Mike on this one, and then we'll do Mike first, and then Joe, and then Liam. So, of all the factions in the book, which one do you think the coolest, most flavorful list, or the one that you're most looking forward to seeing on the tabletop? So, Mike, you're first.
Oh, I know what Joe's going to say.
Yeah. Can we do least favorite?
You can do both.
You can do both if you wanted to. Yeah, you can do most favorite, least favorite.
So for me, I actually think it was a last minute edition that Liam just snuck in there. I actually think the New England Privateers, is that what it's called? Right? New England Privateers?
Yeah.
New England Privateers to me is I think the one that I find most interesting because it's kind of a different list we have in there. But the French one more like the made more seamanly. But it's still I think that's probably my choice.
Okay.
How about you, Liam?
Right.
We'll save Joe for last.
Yeah,
You got the best one.
Liam, go for it.
I got quite a few favorites, to be honest. My favorite Indian faction is the Iroquois, and I think my favorite commander is one of the Iroquois commanders. No, they used to be my favorite. I quite like the Iroquois now.
They're really.
They're on the good guys' side mainly. I do like the French raiders. Yeah, I do like the French Raiders. They're a really powerful list. When you figured out how to play them, they are nasty. But like Mike, I think if I had to pick one, I'd probably go with the English Privateers because they're just a little bit different to the other English thief factions that we have.
What's cool about them is that to me they're kind of like they are like early Americans. So it's like the early Revolutionary War type American sailors you think about. It's kind of like a precursor to me.
Right. So
Which
there's
is exactly
a
what
lot.
they're really. But sorry.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good history there as well. It's kind of like these guys that are quite a lot of New England seamen now by this stage are sailing around the world. They're going on the famous pirate round. By the 1690s, they're heading out to the Indian Ocean, to Madagascar. They're on the west coast of Africa. They're up and down to the Caribbean. And they have this sort of quite interesting relationship with the English authorities, many of them, in that they're kind of operating in a gray zone when it comes to legality. Quite a lot of the time, they're breaking the monopolies of the Royal Africa Company, of the East India Company. They're kind of hovering between smuggling, illegal trading, interloping, privateering, and even into piracy. So you can see a real continuity here in terms of the kind of the what's going on through the last decades of the 17th century into the early 18th century, and then to the kind of the pirate, the golden age of piracy that we cover in the next book.
One thing that you're probably getting if you're kind of listening through to this and hearing these guys chat about it is just how much research went into it, because I look at all the flavor that you put into it and the historical introduction part on the preview that we've been able to look at, and it's very well written. You guys should be very proud of it. And I see that as somebody who likes pooping on historians regularly. I'm very picky about what I'll show students in the high school because I need something that's accessible, it's easy to read, that gives them a good idea without being dry. And you guys hit a pretty good balance. So kudos to you guys.
One thing I'm really proud of all the stuff we've done throughout Blood and Plunder is that a lot of our historical work is actually quite scholarly. We're digging around through a lot of primary sources and just getting really good references and finding stuff. Like, we've helped Benderson looking for stuff for us has discovered new things, and so it's really cool to have that level of to be able to present that level of historical, not just accuracy but also just story. That just we bring up a lot of really interesting things that these guys have all done. I've of course part of any of that really aside.
Yeah, as the resident historian among the podcast crew, I'm pretty proud of that. I can lord it over, Glenn and Tyler, even though they know more than me about this particular subject. I can pretend that I know more, thanks to you guys and your research.
I mean, it's interesting to try and. You've only got a limited amount of space to try and cram in the case of King William's War, 9 years or more of detailed stuff, and you've got a limited amount of space. Yeah. But what you also want to do is keep a narrative. It has to have a story. People want to know. People want to know the so what as well as the just the bare facts. So we did try to strike that balance as much as we could.
And I wasn't trying to leave. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tyler.
I was to say, I imagine it's also kind of tricky because Blood and Plunder, like as good as the history in first two expansions has been mostly focused on South America and the Caribbean. So you don't have all of the really complicated. New England in this part of the country was extremely complicated with the tribal relations that were happening, and colonists being mashed up all sort of on one landmass instead of politely sticking to their own islands. And you don't have anything to build off of. So this expansion is like completely new history for a lot of people.
It's not hard to see how Joe would go down a rabbit hole looking up all these tribes. It's pretty easy.
I have got a lot of books. This is embarrassing.
Well,
Joe, that brings you. You have to tell us your favorite unit, and they both seem to think that they know what it is. So what's your favorite faction here?
Well, it's been kind of an ongoing struggle / joke. There's a New England Village Garrison faction, which is a very different style of faction. It's much more. Oh, I really wanted something to represent the many New England towns that were raided. They would have some militia. They would have just the local men. They have civilians, and they have their garrison houses, very defensible, sturdy houses that they built specifically to withstand these raids. So it's kind of a terrible faction, but it's a very different style of play, and it represents something kind of new, more of a defensive, just hold on and survive and try not to get everyone scalped kind of faction. And
It's
Liam
definitely Liam's second favorite faction. Maybe tied with the West though.
So I have to ask, if this is a an all hands on deck defend the town faction, is this an alternate use for the Buccaneer models that came out recently?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Mhm.
Yes.
There
I'm
is a
excited for
unit.
these rules.
Joseph obsessed very effectively over creating. He tried to get it into Raise the Black, but there's a lot of stuff in Raise the Black, so it's just there was no time to play test it properly, especially because throughout most of the development of Raise the Black, nobody could play together. So there was he wanted to get this unit in Raise the Black of civilians, but we just weren't able to pull it off. So then he decided he was going to get it into this one come hell. So it's in there.
They're called Village Idiots.
Yes, that's
Affectionately, by
or-
Liam.
or the village people is also acceptable.
It's like, in fact, it has been a joke running between us because I just was like, why are we putting a Village Idiot faction in here? Who's going to want to play the Village Idiots? Nobody.
No, I
Joe
will
was
be
like,
playing
no, we
them.
need them. We need them.
I'm
We
gonna
need
show
these
up to a
guys."
tournament with these at some point.
Joe, let me tell you something. If you make it out to the East Coast for one of these conventions, and you want to, if we play like a team, like a doubles tournament, I will play doubles Village Idiot faction with you. I'll have them painted and ready.
All right.
Also,
Village Idiots all
Liam,
the way.
this is the new Ringer faction. Anytime we're hosting a tournament,
Just get to beat up on the civilians. It's going to be good
Well-
for narrative play too. Like
Yeah.
one of the things I
Well,
was
that's what it's really
excited to
good for,
see
yeah.
Buccaneera for was playing the Spanish attack on was it Stewartstown in the Carolinas, the Scottish
Mhm.
settlement.
Yeah.
And
All right.
You'd apply the
Buccaneera are
malaria
probably
rule,
a bit more
whatever.
handy with their muskets than the average Scottish lass would have been, but a Village Idiots group would be great for that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the rules for them. They're 2 points a pop.
Don't they all share one
Inexperience.
musket? They're like the interns in The Life Aquatic.
I think they're the only Europeans with Sound of Thunder, which is fantastic.
They're really bad.
Oh my gosh, seriously, that's great. That's so great.
They get a pig's bladder instead of a hand weapon.
Yes, 1 out of 2 may add Firelock muskets. Fantastic. They really are. Like
So
one of you gets
good.
bullets and the other one gets.
So, like, Mike, please tell me you're making sculpts of these things. Like, do we have like sculpts of the villagers?
So we already have a pack of civilians. So you can use
I
that
already have them. I have
mixed with
them.
the Buccaneer. You got the unit already. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's a
we
good
might
point. Okay.
we might have we could do a one of the things that is very likely to happen actually in the next few weeks, potentially time to the gun, is we're gonna potentially start, and this is kind of like, I guess this is kind of like big news for some people, but we're gonna probably start selling models individually on the website as a web only sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
So-
Okay.
interesting.
But that's a lot of work on the back end.
Well, I mean, you're right to tell us that there's like the civilian pack, and I have them, and they look great. But I want civilians that are like panicked, like people holding their hands to their head, being like, "Oh no," or like people running with a bucket of water to put out a fire, like those kind of things where it'll. I mean, man, that
So
would
what you're
look
saying
cool.
is you want a fireman, a sailor, a policeman,
Yeah, I want models.
An Indian.
Somebody in a war
Big,
bonnet.
An Indian.
that's my favorite.
And a ditch
And a
digger.
biker. Yeah, a
Yeah.
biker.
Oh yeah.
Just like really did it.
There you go.
So speaking of models and individual models, so Mike, walk us through what models are available in the line, particularly for the like the woodland tribes here, the different native factions that Joe's put together. So like what's available to build these factions in terms of models, either that exists or that is planned.
So right now, we have. You're talking about the whole book, right? Just to be clear.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So right now we have the. So we've got the Braves, which are obviously. We've got the. Then what's already? So we have the Canadian militia. We got the Corps de Bois. You've got the English militia, which are there's a lot of units out there that already work for it. We've got Benjamin Church and King Philip coming up in the new resin. We've also got the Iberville, right? That's the guy we're doing, the legendary.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's me. I always feel I have it right. So the Iberville, he'll be coming out in the first quarter next year as a legendary for the French. We're also going to do the group affectionately known as the French Fries, the Compagnies French.
Compagnie Franche de la Marine.
There you go, nailed it. It's perfect.
French fries.
So, they'll be from here on out referred to as the French Fries.
Now, what does that translate to, real quick?
Free companies or independent companies of the Marine.
Mm-hmm. Right. So that's
they're colonial. They're troops raised for colonial service, and they're a new unit in the book, and they're really quite cool. They're regulars, so they've got drills and everything you'd expect of a regular, but they also very quickly adapted to frontier warfare. So they're kind of like regulars who can do almost like early light infantry tactics.
Right. I tried to make them broken, but these guys wouldn't let me. So trying to do some power creep, but I got stopped.
Overpowered French.
Not the first time we've had that complaint.
Who'd have heard of that?
And provincials. We've got provincials, but you can use existing models for them.
Right.
Someone
I was gonna ask
asking me today about the provincials.
Yeah,
So-
and provincials are basically a good uniformed soldiers, European soldiers. I think that's what we call them. Yep. European soldiers. That's perfect model for that.
So are the okay, I'm trying to keep this stuff straight. Raise the Black is going to have like army factions for the great powers, but then this does include provincials and other light army type troops for the wars.
It does, but they're different. This is between this kind of shows the progression toward that from where no PCB on the line starts and where Raise the Black will finish. Not really finish, but for now. For where Raise the Black will end up. These guys are kind of right in the middle of that. So it's kind of like a little bit of a preview of you're gonna get in Raise the Black, but it's still different.
I've been looking forward to provincials, so that really piques my interest.
They're good.
They're pretty good. They're pretty good, yeah. They're better than militia.
Are they the same unit that we saw in the Raise the Black previews?
No, but they're similar.
Okay.
They are functionally the same as far as how they play and how you'll use them, but their stats and equipment is slightly different.
Okay.
They are an early version.
Right.
Yeah, I saw mention on the website. It's a limited release for some of these models, or how can people get their hands on the actual expansion? Is it a PDF that's being offered? Is it a book that's being sold?
So officially, it's a limited release, and if they sell well, then we'll continue to do it. But secretly, and I haven't told my business partners that I have no intention of making a limited when they're not looking. So, but I because I'm confident it's going to do well. They've already done well. So,
So
I think it's and we plan to do smaller expansions like this too going forward. In fact, I've already talked with Joe about an idea he had to do another one for later next year. Yes, he's already bought books for it. A lot of books, I'm sure, knowing Joe.
So this is essentially the Firestarter business model without the Firestarter part. Like it's already started, it's happening.
Right, because exactly. The reason being is with the new resin production we're doing, we don't really have a big expensive startup cost for molding and sculpting now that we have an in-house sculptor who he's finished everything with Race to Black, so he's just gonna sit idle if we don't keep him sculpting. So yeah, we need to justify paying him, so he needs to keep sculpting. So
New villagers.
Yeah, the sculpting is being done, and he's got and then since we don't have a big expensive set of molds to make masters to print and stuff like that, we can justify doing it without trying to raise the funds, because really, however much we pre-order, we don't have any minimums on our orders for these either, so we can just kind of get what we need based on the orders. So it's convenient. Everything is being made domestically. We're not manufacturing any of this ourselves. Our partners at Phalanx are making these for us. So if you've bought Blood and Valor minis recently and you've seen their resin models, it's the same stuff that they're using. So,
Mike, did you actually mention the native models? I think you mentioned everything else, but did
yeah,
you
I think I mentioned. Didn't I mention the? I think I did, didn't I? I thought I did. If I didn't,
young
yes.
Braves and the nieces.
Yes. Nobody knows how to pronounce that word, so feel free to pronounce it as you please.
Did I mess? I feel like Joe probably knows. Did I mess it up? Have we been messing it up this whole time? Anytime that I don't refer to things that would get us demonetized, I think it's a win because the spelling is all there. I mean,
yeah,
it's all there.
Well, that's what they are referred to as internally. So, nothing.
One of our listeners, I thought,
but it could be other nieces too. But nieces just sounds stupid, so nieces has more vowels in it. That's my.
You're just going with fantasy historically kind of approach.
I think one of our other listeners,
by more than one historian. So.
Yeah, I think one of our listeners was saying that it was Niases. So that's multiple votes for Niases.
So I'm good with that.
But I did get a glance at some of the resin prints at Historicon before they all flew off the shelf on Friday.
Yes, we did have a small amount there.
And if you're ready for your dad joke of the day, they were quite nice.
Oh God!
That's okay.
Somebody mute Glenn.
You can edit that. You can.
You could. You're not going to.
Do us all a favor, Tom, and cut that one out.
No, everybody else has to suffer with me, so you're gonna get to hear that terrible pun, and I'm not editing it out.
Bold move.
One more thing I wanted Joe to talk about is the fortification rules. If you want to kind of give a quick overview of, because that's also in this expansion, and I think that's something that I feel like a lot of people who have built terrain or who have like gotten their hands on the Palisade Fort, they kind of wanted some rules that are more tailored to that. So, Joe, do you want to talk about kind of what you did with that?
It wasn't just me.
Liam helped a little.
Liam helped a ton. A lot of this stuff has been in development for a long time, but just hasn't been able to be released because of some supply issues for various pieces. But there's a good chapter here with some of the stuff that has been released over the last couple of years, plus some brand new structures and some special structures, especially custom made for the New England Village Garrison. Everyone will want to play.
So we will be seeing a terrain release from. Is it from something partnered with Foreground? Is it more of the? I didn't think Firelock was going to do any more of your resin. The stuff
so we are doing.
But
we are going to do a bastion that goes with the Palisade. We have it already. We just have to. The trouble has been just resin supply is difficult right now. And it's a very large chunk of resin. So it's we're trying to once resin supply settles down, it'll be released kind of just it'll just appear on the website one day when I get a big resupply of resin one day, because right now I'm basically ordering resin piecemeal because it's all that's available. I'm getting we're getting like to 40 gallons of resin at a time. We normally order 100 gallons, so we got to make sure that it would think to release be out of stock immediately, because I'm not only on that but on chips as well as a result. So. But it's coming. We have it there. The models, the sculpt is done. The mold is there. It's just a matter of getting enough resin. So it'll come out, and I'm sure that's going to stabilize at some point, right? We can't have a shortage forever. Eventually, we have to do that, or just find another way to do it. So it'll be out one way or another.
Tell that to the guy who keeps cutting ships in half.
Yeah, I know.
Throwing half the magazine away.
If only we could melt it and reuse it.
Yeah.
No,
I got a load of offcuts so you could melt.
That's what I'm telling you. Just gets all our ships and cuts them up in pieces.
So
is there going to be
Liam?
Is there some point where you're going to just take the fronts or whatever you've cut off and build another ship out of that?
I
Whole shantytown.
I could build a sinking ship, just kind of one going down by the stern.
Yeah, you could.
Like
You
a
could
little
probably
diorama piece.
You could probably build like a fantasy. What's that game? Assassin's Creed version of like Nassau, just out of broken ship pieces.
Yeah, that would be quite cool. Just on some of the buildings for New England, the foreground guys have been looking at some Iroquois longhouses and New England longhouses. Ben's been doing some research. He did make one, which I now own. Awesome. It is absolutely amazing. It is so gorgeous.
Yeah.
They've got to figure out whether that can actually be turned into a kit that can be put into production. But hopefully, if we lean on them hard enough, we should get some pretty good Northeast Frontier type buildings from those guys as well. Right.
And we do have a big foreground restock coming in toward the beginning of the year. So we'll have that. If they have, we're hoping. I'm holding out and hoping that they'll have some cool northeastern stuff to come to send me along with that.
Ben is another one who runs foreground. Who he is amazing when he's designing buildings in terms of the research he goes to. He probably now knows more about. He even contacted some of the kind of the representative bodies of some of the Native American tribes to figure out how get some details of architecture and different styles of longhouse that were being built. And I mean, he's quite amazing. He's even done the interior of this longhouse that I've got, with the raised benches and like bunks on the side and fire pits along the side, and he just goes to an amazing amount of detail. It's incredible.
Yeah, their stuff is awesome. As anybody who has any of their stuff knows, it's pretty good stuff.
I'm hoping they pick up that New England style Garrison house that Things from the Basement has worked up and released that too, because that's very.
I feel like I have an ambition for Joe's sake to build him a New England town of some kind, because I don't know. I think there are reproductions and stuff up here. Like we have, because I'm the only person on this podcast who's in the Northeast. Like I'm in New England. And
you're in New England. I was going to say, I'm Northeast.
Yeah. I've walked through productions of longhouses. I've gotten to see recreations of colonial towns, colonial villages. Like we have Phillipsburg Manor in downtown Tarrytown. So like they have like reproductions of a lot of like 16th, 17th century era, like mechanical. They have a water wheel and things like that. So there's stuff I've gotten to see, which is really very cool. So I'm excited to see what they come out with for foregrounds. Let me ask Liam and Joe one kind of parting question about all the work that they've done. And I know you work with other people as well, but we'll start with Joe and ask you, like, the whole process of writing the rules. What was your favorite thing about the process and your least favorite thing about the process? Since Mike's going to ask you to do it again, this is your chance to tell him what you liked and what you didn't like.
Oh, that's like the most fun part of it is just doing the kind of initial read through of the overview, and then just saying, how can this be represented, and just brainstorming different weird stuff that would play out in an entertaining or fresh way on the table. Or just reading a book and just jotting down notes. So here's a weird guy. Look at what he did, and let's give him all these weird rules and see what happens. And playing it out. So that first rush of matching the history to the mechanics is definitely most fun for me. And then after that, once you find the cool guy, you get all the ideas, and you have to actually research him and write a solid bio for him and do all the hard work after that. But the first touch on it is most fun for me.
And his least favorite. Probably.
I missed that.
Your least favorite thing was?
Oh, what was my least favorite?
Yeah, Mike is cutting out sometimes here.
Sorry.
So we didn't catch the back half of his statement.
I would guess for Joe's sake it was eliminating all the native factions that he wanted to include.
Yeah, basically all the axing I did of all his work. and then I'm boosting all their points.
I don't know the most hardest part. Keeping track of everything. When you get an idea or find a account and you write it down, and then you want to go back and check on it or figure out what you're going to expand on that, and you can't figure out which book you pulled it out of. So maybe I'm just a bad historian, but I need to take better notes.
Oh, I had the same problem all the time whenever I did stuff. So it's just you're in that rush and that hustle you're moving around, and then things just get lost in the shuffle.
You need to make footnotes for your rules. Sure.
Yeah.
Fighting to then delete them all later.
And Liam, same question. I want to throw it your way. Is favorite part of this whole process and the worst part?
Ooh, favorite part. I mean, I'm a history nerd. I've always been very into 17th, 18th century history, and particularly naval history. So doing the background research and kind of joining dots and figuring stuff out is always fun. I mean, there's one example, which is the Hampshire, which is a ship that was in a fight in Hudson's Bay. There's a battle in Hudson's Bay, believe it or not, a naval battle with d'Iberville on one side and 3 English ships on the other side. And the d'Iberville wins, and the Hampshire sinks, which is one of the 3 English ships. And there were just things about that story that didn't really add up in the kind of the most common narratives. And just kind of digging into that a little bit more, going back and looking at like the 1688 survey of the Royal Navy to find out a little bit more about the size of the Hampshire versus the size of the Pelican, which is the French ship, to see how they compared, trying to figure out what happened in the fight and why the Hampshire sank. So I spent 2 days going through this stuff because there's different stories on the internet, in different books. There's all these different weird stories. Some say it blew up, and some say it just sank suddenly, and there was this weird theory about it hitting a shoal, and I couldn't get to the bottom of it at all. So I contacted Benison, who helped me to try and figure it out. So we did a little bit of digging around, and he came up with some stuff that was published in 1934 in the records of the Dominion of Canada. They had a paper that produced some records from a court case where the wife of the captain of the Hampshire, the ship that sank, was asking for a pension because her husband was killed in the fight. And there was an eyewitness, like 2 eyewitness reports of how the ship went down. And so we finally managed to nail what probably happened to it. And I think in the end, it changed 3 words in the whole narrative.
And they went back and forth for weeks.
And it sank.
it was crazy. I mean, we just checked. It was 3 words just had to be deleted, and it was fine. But it's things like that I enjoy. To be honest, it's getting into that sort of detail. I'm going, aha, all right, okay, I get it. I kind of have a picture now in my mind as to what might probably have happened, and you can kind of dismiss some of the wilder stuff. So I enjoyed that a lot.
And that's the scholarly stuff I'm talking about that ends up happening in these projects.
yeah. I mean, you'd never know. It'll never see the light of day after that, but it's there. Least favorite, cutting that kind of stuff back to keep the narrative, to not have the thing suddenly turn into 800 pages rather than 80.
Yes, and if we didn't cut Liam back, the book would have been, instead of 80 pages, would have been like 800. So that's for sure. But it's hard to cut because it's really good. It is all really good stuff. So
it's pretty cool that the Hampshire was the subject of some of the stuff you're working on, Liam, because when I published that mini campaign back in the summer last year, sometime during quarantine, that had 12 segments or battles in it. That battle actually featured as one of the ones that a scenario was based off of.
Cool. Well, we've stolen your idea because we put it in the book too.
Oh, I'm sure you guys did a better job because I just tried to take whatever scenarios already existed and like slap some forces to them.
Well, we just took yours and took all the credit.
Yeah, that's probably.
I'm going to guess, but I suspect that Glenn did not go to the 1688 registry of royal shipping.
If it wasn't on Wiki, I didn't know it.
You're like the worst students I have. You're just like
I mean, even reaching out to Little can be really hit or miss. I wanted to put together a scenario with the Hudson contain riding down the French buccaneer on the island. And I asked him, because it shows up in the timeline for Blood and Plunder, and I was like, oh, this sounds like a really cool scenario. And I asked him if there were any sources on that, and he's like, well, you've got your choice. Do you speak Spanish or French? And I'm like, neither. So he sent me the one in French. And he mentioned that he might try to translate it, and about a month later, I'm sure he's a busy guy. A month later, he gets to me, and he sends me this thing in French, and I'm like, I don't know if you know this, but I don't speak French.
He's trying to get you to learn. He's trying to get you to better yourself.
Yeah, I guess it's the motivation to sit down and learn French, but...
That's one of the things I liked about this project. So much of the history is in
English.
Or New England.
Yeah, the typesetting might be a little wonky, but it's predominantly in English.
The next one Joe's gonna do is all in Spanish, so I can teach you Spanish between now and then, Joe. It's fine.
Is that by chance the St. Augustine stuff?
Probably.
St. Augustine is outside the period.
St. Augustine outside the period?
Oh, there's a lot of St. Augustine.
I thought that was I thought that was later. I thought that was later in the 1700s.
Oh, St. Augustine never stops being on fire.
Still on fire.
I was in trouble.
It was fun when I was there. That's all I know.
Yeah.
All right, so I would say that in the interest of letting Liam get to bed, since it's like past midnight at this point for him, we're gonna jump into a rehash of the trivia, and then Joe Forrester has been nice enough to furnish the trivia question this time around. So we went through the whole rigmarole last year. God, it's really cold in this room. It's cold in this room. It's cold right now. I can't feel my feet. So
I hear you. It's cold here too.
Last month was a sloop. So Tyler, I think who came up with this? Was it Glenn or Tyler? This was.
That was me.
Last time.
That was me.
So Glenn, take it away. Read the question, the answer, and tell us what happened.
All right. So the question last time was, though not originally attributed to Blackbeard, in what year was his flag, featuring a horned skeleton holding an hourglass in one hand and pointing a spear toward a bleeding heart in the other, first described in print? And the answer, this got interesting because a bunch of people like a whole lot of people emailed me the same wrong answer, citing the same piece of work. So this does go into the thing Tom's always talking about check your sources. The correct answer is 1912 in the Mariner's Mirror, which I did look and confirm via a copy on like Google Scholar or something like that.
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. However, a lot of people answered 1911, and I went and found the book that they were all referencing. And if you read through the text, it's not actually there. Blackbeard is mentioned as something somewhere, and then they're talking about other pirates and their flags, but nowhere do they describe Blackbeard's flag. So we still had one of the largest winner pools that we've ever seen. I think it was 26 people got correct answers with like a dozen wrong answers.
They were competing for a $70 ship, so
Yeah.
put it in.
So the winner was Garrett Swader, and I mailed the ship earlier this month, still November. He already has it, and I believe they're already working on getting it built and painted. So
Nice.
we might actually see that on paint night soon.
Very cool.
Ooh. All
So
right. So I'm gonna read the rules very briefly. Glenn, do you have a prize for this?
Yeah, behind
from
the scenes moment. I don't know
your
that the prize we
festival
had
bar?
last time
Ooh.
works.
well, we originally had something else lined up, but I lined up several prizes when we were at Historicon, and I had access to the full Firelock store. So the prize this time is actually going to be a pair of Bucaniera and a pack of bone dice.
Ooh, okay, cool.
Multi win.
All right, so
Does
the
it-
rules are we have to email your responses to talesofthesale@gmail.com. That's TALES of the sale with no spaces at gmail.com before the end of whenever we're going to record. So that's probably going to be right around New Year's. So we will post on our Facebook page. We'll also post in Buccaneering Across the Spanish Main to just remind people to get their answers in. But this should be released relatively quickly, probably Tuesday, mid-month. So it'll be out for the majority of December. So, Joe, do you have access to the sheet? Can you read the question? Because I want to give you the honor since it was your trivia question. It's pretty cool.
You're on the spot, Joe. You didn't have it open. You weren't looking at the notes.
I was looking at how I formulated the question. I'm wondering how he wanted to actually do it because my
If you typed it up a different way, by all means, you can use that.
No,
Yeah,
I
you
was
can use
worried because I couldn't use mine because it's so horrible. So, all right. Now this is easy. This is an easy way to formulate.
Yeah.
All right. Here's the question.
Okay.
One of the colonial conflicts covered by Fire on the Frontiers is particularly notable for being the bloodiest war in American history per capita. Which war is this? And can we put on that what is the casualty rate?
If you'd like to, yeah, we have that info.
Yes. So we need the war and we need the casualty rate. Okay. And the prize
war
is
is a
the 2
50-50
Bucaniere
flip.
and
That's
the 2
easy.
bone dice. All right.
Now I know
ties it
Joe
up.
gave us the casualty rate.
It will
Tyler,
come up
when
if you.
Okay,
Yes.
I know Tyler
was
checked the
able-
answer.
There's
I was
several
sitting
different
in a
rates that
car
come up.
wash when Joe typed the question, and I was able to find it by the time I was done with all of the like mechanical rolly brushes and soap and whatnot.
So it should be easy.
Yes. Should be. Should be easy.
So there you go. There's how to get a nice prize of some civilians armed to defend their village of idiots, and some bone dice, possibly carved out of idiot bones.
Possibly.
Okay. We
Some
also
idiot
did
knuckles.
post we did post on the webpage to see if any gaming clubs, groups in the area wanted us to do some advertising for them. And we did not hear back from you guys in time. I don't have anything exciting going on except the demo down at Mythicos with Nigel probably in a week. I have to check the calendar, but I will post a couple days before and let people know that I'm going to be down there. It's probably going to be on a Monday night. So I have to double check, but I will post about it because I don't have it written down. I did not show up to class prepared today. I apologize. So I will start the close by thanking Joe
Wait,
Forrester.
hold on, Mike.
Nope.
Hold on, Mike.
Yeah.
Just upcoming things. What's in March? Adepticon? Is that what the next big show you guys are going to?
Yes,
Might as well
March.
plug something.
Adepticon
Okay.
at the end of March. We may have something in between. I'm looking at a few shows in the southeast that I may go out to, depending on how busy we get. So that's a possibility. I did. It's good that I was going to interrupt, so you interrupted for me. But I was going to say one thing we didn't touch on in the book that I think is really cool is the new book is going to have a whole for the first time in any of the books we've put out. It's going to have a bunch of historical scenarios to cover a bunch of the historical battles that happened. And Joe's done a really good job of bringing those, scaling them properly to a Blood and Plunder workable game, and there's some really good ones in there. I don't know if we have time to cover them briefly. I know you're worried about Liam going to sleep, but believe me, Liam doesn't sleep, so he'll be up for several hours after we're done here.
We got time, Joe, if you want to just mention what they are.
I think Liam can just hang up if he needs to. It's fine.
I'm good.
Bye, Liam. I
I'm
guess.
No, I'm good.
Oh,
Just
there's
gave
so
you your
many-
opportunity to get out, and you missed it.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
I feel like this is a big area in Blood and Plunder that could be expanded a lot. So excited about it. But there's a very limited selection, but some fun stuff in here. I'll just mention two of them. There's the Great Swamp Fight, which is a notable battle near the kind of the beginning of King Philip's War, where New England militia or expeditionary force came down and attacked Narragansett. Big town, fortified town, had a big palisade wall in the middle of winter, super cold. They were in a marsh or a swamp, but it was too cold, so the swamp was all frozen. So the English just marched over it. They had Indian guide to show them where it was. A bunch of people, numbers differ, but a couple thousand at least in this town. They attacked a couple times, but there was a gap in the wall that was the Indian scout led them to, and they tried to charge through that. Ended up burning down almost the whole thing. A bunch of civilians lost their lives in the fire. English are pretty nasty when it comes down to it. So this scenario features some of the. It helps you use some of the fortifications that are in the book, plus lets you experience some of the factions there and experience some of the real events and real characters that were there. And the other one that I already mentioned was that Hudson Bay, Battle of Hudson's Bay. It's a kind of a big naval battle. There's real lists included that try to represent it kind of in a scaled way, but as close as the game can get. And then there's just some generic guidelines for building your own list. But the scenario officially calls for 2 6th-rate frigates, so you can buy those right now, today, in the next, I guess, price.
Well, not by the time this is out, but
Yeah.
You can. You're just going to be paying.
A little more.
Yeah.
That's a
Well, you're
fun-
lucky. They should be 4th rates.
Yeah, they should be 4th rates, another 12 inches long, but that's a
Poof.
big kind of asymmetric naval battle. It should be pretty entertaining too. Kind of two big giants, and then two opposing each other, plus two kind of English merchant vessels that come into the battle late, and the French just need to blow them to pieces.
alert.
Yeah.
Oh, and Mike, one more update I would ask was you updated recently on the current release expectation for the Raise the Black Kickstarter. It's currently
Yes.
sitting at when?
So right now, it's looking like we'll get everything. So one of the things I've been trying to hustle and make happen is to move all the manufacturing over to the stateside. Just with everything going on overseas and the shipping and the delays and everything, I knew it was going to be a big mess if we were stuck making it there. Unfortunately, as of right now, we're still stuck making it there. I haven't exhausted every option, but it does not look good. The main reason is so the people that we're working with, they have open facilities here in the States. So in the future, we are going to be moving a lot of our plastics manufacturing over here. which is going to be good for future projects. But for right now, the big holdup is the ship. Or not the holdup, but the thing that's preventing us from being able to do everything here is the ship, because the ship is just an incredibly complex mold to get right. I mean, there's just tons of little details and wood grain and all that. The guys who are doing this have done. If anybody plays, I think it's Age of Sigmar. They did it for. The guys who are doing this, they did when Age of Sigmar had like a ship. They made like a piece of ship terrain. It's like a sunken ship sort of thing. Yeah. So they've done that, and they commented that this is even more complex and detailed than that was, because it's not a sunken one and it's a functional one. I don't know, but we've gone before months ago. We had gone back and forth like crazy on the detail of the ship and the planking and the wood grain and all that, because they wanted to really tone it down, and I didn't want to compromise on that too much. So we finally got to a place where everybody was happy, but it's still complex. There's a lot of thin bits, a lot of tiny parts, and things that are. It's a larger mold than is typical. I believe it's like a 9 by. No, it's bigger than that. I think it's like 11. I think it's almost like a 8.5 by 11 or something like that. Kind of like a sheet of paper size mold. U.S. letter paper. It's roughly around that size, I believe. I haven't seen it in person yet, so I'm not really sure. But with the power outages over there and stuff, they've been taking forever to get that mold done. So that's been a huge delay. But it's now finally finishing up, and I'm expecting to receive the first shots of it in a couple weeks. So I'm knock on wood here, make sure that comes through. But yeah, because of that ship being really complex and having a lot of intricacies, they were not comfortable because they can't adjust the tool. They could adjust the tool easily in China, where if they did it here, it'd be very time consuming and incredibly expensive. So it would actually be cheaper to ship it back and have them retouch it and then bring it back over here, which would be we would lose so much more time. Not to mention it would be dramatic, very expensive. So we had to just kind of commit to doing it all overseas. And as a result, with Chinese New Year and everything around the corner, we're looking at probably getting it out in March, potentially in February, but they said more realistically probably March, early March. So then it's got to cross the water and get to us. So I'm hoping that things will get better with shipping by then. A lot of the clogs will free up as more ships hit the water and restrictions start lifting places and things like that. So here's to hoping, but that means it's hard to predict at this point. That's why we didn't give a date as to when we expect to be shipping, but we expect it to be out of the factory no later than March. So if things go well, that could mean shipping starting as early as April. But if things stay the way they are now, that it could be as late as early summer. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. But that's where it stands right now. So
well, I will say that even though I know I am excited to get them, there's a part of me that's kind of glad that they're delayed, because when they come and I ordered a lot of stuff. So even though I already paid for it, like a year ago, when it comes, my wife's going to be like, wait, whoa. And
so you get to enjoy your marriage for a little bit longer, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah, you've delayed the reckoning in a way. Supply chain problems have delayed the reckoning. So I'm happy for the reprieve.
I'm glad somebody's happy about it. I'm certainly not.
Tom, I did mention we're just finishing up the new guest room, right?
There you go.
Mean you're looking for another tenant.
So I'm just playing like my white noise candle where it's got like the waves. I have my little admiral's hat on, and I'm like, the admiral pledge. I'm so sorry.
The good news though is that, like I said, since it's all kind of done and we've got more people involved, like we've got our sculptor Daniel, who a lot of you guys got to meet at Historicon, and Liam and Joseph and other people helping out. And we've got a bunch of games similar to in the vein of Blood and Valor, where we're just kind of producing rule books that we've been sitting on for a while because we haven't been able to work on them. But now that the project load has cleared and it's just me fighting with logistics at this point, everybody else can do what they need to do. So all our graphics and sculpting and everything is all freed up. So we got a lot of cool stuff coming in between to keep you entertained. So we've got like some people got to play Blood and Steel at Historicon, which is a Victorian era kind of colonial skirmish game, basically offshoot of Blood and Plunder, in the same vein as Blood and Valor. We got the Blood and Valor expansion coming out, of course. Those two will be coming out roughly around the same time, so it should be very early next year. And then we've got, of course, War Stories, the World War II RPG. We're venturing into role-playing games. So that'll be pre-order for that will be coming up probably early next year as well, just as the other two books are rolling out. We've got Joe's other project. We've got Blood and Crowns, which is something we haven't talked too much about, but is really starting to to develop and should be done by middle of like probably spring of next year. And that's a 100 Years War game, basically again based on Blood and Plunder. Blood and Plunder, Blood and Valor mix on that one, but it's cool because it's a 100 Years War game that also includes the naval aspect. So you'll be able to run around in cogs and such, and board each other. It should be really fun. It is really fun. I can test that actually. So I had a friend paint a bunch of models because he's excited to play it. So we've been testing it. I haven't tested it in a while, but it's cool. So. And then we've got the Under the Black Sail, which is relevant to this podcast, which he's wrapping up at the Tim Korklowski's wrapping it up, and that's going to be. We don't really have a set date for that one yet, but it'll probably be later next year at some point. And we've got a few other things bobbing around here and there. So. Frontiers, or the game probably formerly known as Frontiers, is probably going to get a name change to avoid confusion with this expansion. But that's something I've been touching on. We've got a lot of stuff sculpted up and ready for Oak and Iron, and we found a domestic facility that can make the PVC ships here. So there's a good chance that we might be able to, depending on how everything looks, start doing some releases for Oak and Iron finally. So you might start to see some Oak and Iron releases pop up towards the spring if we're lucky. Kind of piecemeal, we'll probably do like a box a quarter or something like that. We wanted to do a Kickstarter. We may do a Kickstarter, but if that's the case, it'll wait longer. But if we can swing it, we're going to try to do just a direct release and just release it bits at a time, since we don't want to run a Kickstarter obviously while we have one waiting in the wings. So I don't want to make people wait forever to get the Oak and Iron stuff. So if we can make it, we're going to make it. So that's a potential thing coming. And I think for the most part, aside from some model releases we have planned for the rest of the year, so you're going to see some new stuff. We're trying to come up with some more affordable options, as we have a price rise coming up. By the time this podcast is out, it should be up, because our costs just continue to skyrocket on everything. Metal continues to go up. Resin is high, and we can't get it. So packaging is everything. It's just, I've talked about it plenty before. I don't want to bore everybody on that, but so there's a bunch of cool stuff waiting around the wings while we wait. So, and then of course that project the Raise the Black will definitely be out next year at some point. So hopefully earlier than later.
And I'm glad I got interrupted. There was more to announce than I thought there was going to be.
As far as upcoming events and dates, I have the dates for Adepticon and Cold Wars. Adepticon is running March 23rd through March 27th in Schaumburg, Illinois. And then Cold Wars will be happening, I believe, the following weekend. It's April 1st through the 3rd in Ocean City, Maryland. So those are near enough and large enough events. You probably want to be looking for hotel rooms and the like now.
Yep.
And I know we'll see Firelock at Adepticon. Are you guys doing Cold Wars, or?
We will not be at Cold Wars, but Phalanx Consortium will be there with all of our wares.
Cool.
And I know there'll be a bunch of guys there running events and such. So there'll be plenty of Blood and Plunder and Blood and Valor and Oaken Iron and everything else happening over there.
Definitely.
Cool.
Mhm.
All right. Well, I think we've run a little long, but that's okay because we had a lot to cover and we had a lot of people on here. So I want to thank Mike Tunez for being on, Joe Forrester for being on, and Liam Taylor for staying up past his bedtime, no matter what the rest of you guys say. So thanks so much for joining us. And Glenn, if you want to just do the final sign off.
Yep. Well, everyone, as always, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you around on Facebook and at the Paint Nights. Speaking of Paint Nights, this month in December are the 5th, which I'm sorry, nope. The 3rd, which will be before this episode's out, the 17th, and we're probably gonna skip New Year's Eve. So
I'm not doing that.
I was
see
gonna
you
be
on
there.
the. We might see you
there.
on the 17th.
I'll be there by myself, I guess.
Paint with Mike on New Year's Eve.
There you go. Paint with Mike, New Year's Eve. He's stuck doing it now. All right. All right, everyone. Again, thank you all for listening. We can't do it without you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for joining the show tonight. Remember to follow us on Twitter at No Dice, No Glory, and keep the conversation going on NoDiceNoGlory.com, now featuring our own message boards. Have a great night, everybody.